In 1900, bubonic plague was epidemic in the ports of Asia. Its mode of transmission was not understood. When cases surfaced in San Francisco, the Chinese people were held accountable. Chinatown was cordoned off. Homes and businesses were fumigated and destroyed. Plague was termed an Oriental disease peculiar to rice eaters, and moves were made to quarantine all of the Chinese. The city health officer also laid smallpox at the feet of what he called the unscrupulous, lying, and treacherous Chinamen in their dark and dingy quarters. Leprosy, too, was considered an inherently Chinese disease, transmitted to whites via opium pipes. Fear and prejudice, intensified by uncertainty, can easily override sympathy for those affected by such a disease.
Everybody thought I was going to die. And all them doctors and everything was around my bed. I remember the priest giving me last rites. And, I prayed and prayed to, don't take me out right now because I still want to see my family grow up and my grandkids and all that, They came to tell me about going up to the ward where they keep those people, And I didn't want to go up there because I was thinking, God, people going to know. I don't want nobody to know because people don't understand about this sickness. They just treat you like you got a plague or something. You cannot be yourself. You can't let nobody know. You have to live a very secretive life.
But I thought I got it from a female, which I still think to this day. The lady was a prostitute, okay? And I felt that I'd come in contact with it that way. Because she did tell me this, that she had tested positive. I was whisked away to a very far corner of the jail. I was isolated away from everyone. I was not allowed contact with anyone. I was not allowed to use the phone. I had to slip a message out to have someone call the American Civil Liberties Union and have an attorney come see me so I could get out of the cell.
Shanti Project, this is George. Have you ever used Shanti services before? Okay. You want to hold on a moment, please? Shanti Project, can you hold, please?
In Hindu scripture, Shanti is a word for celestial peace, sometimes repeated as an incantation.
Shanti Project, can you hold, please? Thank you for waiting. May I help you?
At the Shanti Project in San Francisco, dispensing celestial peace can be nerve-wracking. The organization is a counseling center for people with AIDS.
There. We're averaging around 6,000 calls a month, and I answer them all. Shanti Project, this is George. Jana, hi, this is an intake, please. He's a little distressed. Sometimes it's difficult, and you just kind of have to hope that there's a pause so that you can kind of take a deep breath and go on, because sometimes you hear things that, are a little unsettling.
Yes.
Volunteer information.
Thanks.
To the Shanti staff, funeral arrangements, emergency places to live, and suicide counseling are everyday requests. Callers are often distraught.
Is your will a simple affair? In other words, are we dealing with what is now a real basic estate? Yeah.
Many of the diseases that strike people with AIDS, such as pneumocystis pneumonia, can be grim in their later stages. Shanti counselors do not advocate suicide, but will refer people to the Hemlock Society, which provides how-to information about voluntary euthanasia.
Well, I just had a call from somebody that I know who it is, and he doesn't realize who I am, and he's asking for Will, Neptune Society, and Hemlock Society.
You want to call him back?
No. The funny part of it is I really feel like I have to treat it as a confidential thing.
You know the individual socially?
Mm-hmm.
You could approach him from a social angle.
I think that's what I'll do. If he's willing to wait for information about the Hemlock Society, he's probably not planning to do anything right away. So.
Do I know who it is?
Probably.
I don't want to know.
Many people with AIDS or many people that are going through the dying process are obnoxious and very demanding. And what
Hundreds of
oftentimes
people come to
happens
Shanti as volunteers.
is that they just get
The
very
public in
timid
general is fearful of
around
people
that.
with AIDS, and that fear is often compounded by a lack of sympathy springing from the fact that the virus has spread mainly among homosexuals and drug addicts. Most of these volunteers, however, know someone who has AIDS or someone who has died, or have themselves tested positive for the virus. They are training to help patients and their families through the emotional turmoil of the disease.
It's also very difficult when you prepare yourself for your loved one to die, and then they don't die. You know, when the respirations start to slow down and you think, oh God, you know, it's going to maybe be in 48 hours, and the next day it's even worse, and you think, well, maybe it's going to happen, and then you totally give them that last amount of your energy, and then suddenly, the next morning they rally, they're feeling good, and you think, oh my God, how am I going to do this for another 2 months? You know, and that's hard stuff to talk about.
At these training sessions, one of the instructors is Bobby Reynolds, a native San Franciscan. His parents are dead, and his only close relative is a sister. In 1982, his doctor diagnosed him with Kaposi's sarcoma skin cancer, one of the primary diseases that strike people with AIDS.
I expected that he would tell me everything was fine over the phone, when in fact he said, I'm sorry, it's positive. So I went into shock. Living with AIDS these past 4 years has been an incredible experience. I treasure the lessons that I have learned.
Today, Bobby
from my
Reynolds
friends
is a
and loved
rarity.
ones.
The life expectancy of a person with AIDS is about 18 months. But chemotherapy successfully controlled his cancer. He has become a prominent advocate of the rights of people with AIDS, all the while mindful that, with his immune system damaged by the virus, his body is defenseless against any disease that may come along.
What is right now is that I'm doing pretty good. And what's possible is a lot. You know, there's a lot possible. So. When I was first diagnosed, people gave me, you wouldn't believe some of the stuff, coffee enemas. They need someone to hang their hope on. They need to have somebody to be a role model for them. And I think I have been able to do that. And so beyond dealing with your decision about how you want to be, you end up having to deal with all this other stuff that's out there.
I told my brother before I got pregnant that, you know, I wasn't sure how things would be between us because I didn't want to take any chances with my kids. Every doctor I talked to said that I shouldn't have any contact with my brother because they just don't know.
It was the kind of thing, well, if nobody can tell us what's going on, then, gee, you know, what are you supposed to do?
Although they live just a few miles apart, Bobby and Susan have scarcely seen each other in the 2.5 years since her twin boys were born.
I told him that I would try and keep in touch with him on the phone, which I did. And every week it would be like he'd get a little cooler. And we finally just more or less cut off communications. He told me that it was like I had rejected him, and he just couldn't deal with it right now. And I couldn't do much about it because I figured, hey, you know, I'm pregnant. I'm not going to get pregnant again. I can't take any chances. I don't want anything to happen to my baby.
Hundreds, if not thousands, of people have heard me speak and were able to look at AIDS through different eyes. And I have touched men in support group, and I have touched their families, and I have been able to help them find some ways of dealing. And you know, she's my sister.
He'd like Sue to be able to just jump and go, but
with 3 kids and Rod, I can't.
It's just not possible. I mean, it's family first, and unfortunately it's family too, but it's immediate family, and then it's the rest of the family.
I realized that they say casual contact, you probably wouldn't get AIDS, but they can't guarantee it. You know, as much as my mind says, hey, it's okay, my heart says, well, it may be okay, but I still don't know.
You know, I've never told my sister that she was wrong for being afraid, but some of her fears are irrational. And if she's going to continue being afraid, there's someday that I may die, and she will never have been able to cope with those fears.
This woman was diagnosed with AIDS last year. She is addicted to heroin and believes she contracted the disease through shared needles. She would not allow her name or voice to be used on the air, but these are her words.
Well, it hurts, you know, because you're carrying around a burden, and you know what's going on, and you can't let anybody know about it, because you know if they know, then you're going to be an outcast. Oh, they're very hateful about it, and, oh, you got AIDS, don't get around me. Oh, I got in-laws, I wouldn't even think of letting them know, you know? And they're not stupid people. They're not street people either. They're intelligent college people. That's the reason I don't want to come on the media. I don't want to get nothing that will hurt my family.
The majority of the clients I work with will not have any kind of media presentation done on them at all, and I don't blame them. I understand perfectly well with the LaRouche initiative pending, with that mentality floating around America, the potential quarantine, the potential lockup mentality. I certainly understand them wanting to be secretive with their diagnosis.
Not only family and friends of concern for me, but the concern and worry for themselves, you know, and they're very selfish attitudes, you know, and I hope you see this.
That's one great thing I must say about having AIDS, is you can really get away with saying anything.
Is that right?
Yeah, like an old person or a child.
Sean O'Neill is a writer and a lecturer on dance. He has also performed professionally. Last summer, he made an appearance with the dance troupe in Sapporo, Japan.
After about a week, I started not feeling right and having mainly just difficulty breathing. Thinking back on it now, I cannot believe that I kept dancing and kept working. It was a matinee, it was an afternoon, and I knew that I couldn't do the performance because in rehearsal I couldn't finish the ballet on my own breath, so I didn't know what to do. And one of the girls in the company's dad was a doctor, and he got us an oxygen tank. As the music's beginning, as Rossini is beginning, I hear them pull the plug on the oxygen, and in the first movement I dance with 4 different women, 4 different times, and so I did have a couple of exits in the first movement where I would just run off stage and immediately go under the oxygen and try to get my breath back before I went back out. So I would be under the tank, and I would see all of these little Japanese girls with their, you know, all wide-eyed, just staring at me like, you know, is this how Americans have just to get through a performance? So I just was very numb and in a daze and just kind of, you know, kind of floated my way through it. On the flight home, there was the Newsweek and Time articles about AIDS. Again, I read this case history of this guy who had had pneumonia. And every symptom that he had, I went straight to my doctor, and he diagnosed me as having pneumonia and AIDS, virtually there in his office on the spot.
I didn't know that much about AIDS. I, of course, had heard about it. And he was very, very ill. The first time he was hospitalized for 2 weeks and looked for a while like he might not make it. So all we were concerned about at that point was to get him over the pneumonia, and worried about the battle against AIDS later.
Sean's family took turns staying with him. Friends have helped pay his rent. Unlike most people with AIDS, he is free to concentrate on his own thoughts and feelings.
The reactions that I got from my friends essentially saved me.
I think you should go for it.
When you feel like you're close to dying, it's the most unbelievable feeling. You just don't have any time for any baloney. I really started reading an awful lot and listening to tapes and meditating and all of that. it makes you really look at your life and at yourself and at your priorities and what you value. It's nice. It's really nice to be liberated from a lot of that stuff, a lot of that day-to-day, you know, things you think are important that aren't.
Nobody really knows where that sickness came from. Oh, you know, they're just learning about it. But, you know, naturally they have to blame it on something, so they want to say, oh, you know, if you're gay, you get it. You know, I'm no more gay than flying to the moon. And I got it, you know.
The beasties, all of us to some degree have the beasties. You wake up in the middle of the night and how am I going to make my mortgage payment? What am I going to say to my boss tomorrow? I really would like a raise and I don't know what to say. For me, it's fear. When am I going to die? Last Friday, I started noticing a difficulty swallowing. And it got progressively worse over the weekend to the point where I didn't want to eat. And then it became sort of painful all the time. So tomorrow morning I have to go in for an endoscopy where they're going to insert a tube down my throat into my esophagus and stomach to see what might be going on.
Lynn Eubanks is a pediatric nurse. She also volunteers for the Shanti Project. She took her training from Bobby Reynolds and is now assigned to him as an emotional support counselor. She went to see him when he was waiting to find out the cause of his sudden pains.
I was real scared. I didn't want it to be the start of a decline, which Bobby's done without for 4 years. And I know that that day will probably come, but I didn't want it to be now. I won't want it to be whenever it is.
Hi! Look at you! You're getting ready for the party. I am.
The initial test results were a surprise and a relief. The pains appeared to stem from an ulcer.
Look great.
It's all I've been doing, actually, since I got over the shock of it, was laughing. And when I call people to tell them that all the test results were negative and that they're treating me for an ulcer, they all say, oh, great, it's only an ulcer. So... Are we up there?
We're down here.
At about the same time Bobby Reynolds became sick this summer, Sean O'Neill contracted pneumocystis pneumonia for the second time. His mother, Carolyn, flew to San Francisco from the East Coast for the 3-week duration of his treatments.
He was doing quite well until he had the sinus operation, which kind of knocked him down and put him wide open for the pneumonia again.
You like the cinnamon?
But we'll get through this one, too.
I'll see you upstairs.
Okay, all right, boys.
Good luck.
To wake up every morning and know you have to go in there and the veins are getting more and more sore. They're starting to roll. They can't get it with the first try, and it's just terrifying. Last night he was extremely upset, thinking about 2 more weeks of this. And so I wanted to ask you, is there any possibility of shortening the treatment, or is that out of the question?
I would not recommend it, because if we do a shortened treatment, there's a very high possibility that he'll get a relapse.
Dr. Stephen Mahalko treats both Bobby Reynolds and Sean O'Neill.
So if we want to really treat this and try to keep it at bay for a while, then we really should finish a standard course of treatment and not cut any corners.
He's so good about this that you can't be any less than he is. You can't be a whimpering fool, and you have to forget your own pain and your own fear and help him deal with his, because he's the one who's sick.
You just do what you have to do to get through it. The intravenous treatments were horrible.
The first time, we just thought, well, we're different. We're going to lick this thing, and he's, you know, the other patients seemed so tired, and there was a resigned look in their eyes that just, we said, well, this isn't going to be us, you know. And now, as time goes on, you start to understand how difficult it is to live with this thing month after month. And Sean said he can understand now why anyone just doesn't want to fight it anymore.
While treating Sean O'Neill for pneumonia, Dr. Mahalka was running further tests on Bobby Reynolds. His ulcers were not as benign as they appeared.
Well, actually, it did turn out to be herpes. We got a culture report back yesterday and started him on anti-herpes medicine in an oral form. It can be serious and it can spread to other areas, but the main part of this is it's associated usually with an incredible amount of pain, and people are not able sometimes to even swallow their own saliva.
So here it is now, like a week and a half after that started, and I'm feeling pretty good. But I'm still having fevers at night, and I'm starting to have night sweats.
Until last year, Bobby counted on his lover, Mark, to see him through the bouts of sickness and the fear of dying from AIDS. They had been together for 8 years, but Mark died last fall.
Mark. He had his good points and bad points, as we all do. He was a little arrogant. He was very strong-willed about certain things, but we had fun.
When Bobby was diagnosed in 1982, Mark was apparently healthy, but in April of '85, he too was diagnosed, struck by cancer and a debilitating paralysis. The disease progressed quickly in Mark.
And I truthfully admit that I miss being able to go to restaurants and go to a movie. I mean, I'm just not mobile enough to do that, and those things are still important. I want to work. You know, I want to go in my kitchen and cook. I want to be able to help him work in the backyard. And
when I tried to prepare myself as much as possible because I knew his death was inevitable, but you really can't. He went into respiratory failure, and he had done that twice before, so I called just automatically for the ambulance, the paramedics, but he was gone. He was the most important person in my life for a long time. And I think that says it all for anybody, no matter what your sexual preference is. You have somebody in your life that's the most important person. And that's who he was, is. What's next? So I'll live it, and I'll breathe it, and I'll eat it for so long, and then I'll say, break time. You know, let's go blow bubbles, let's go read a murder mystery, or let's just unplug the phone and forget about it. Luckily, I can do that.
Most people with AIDS don't have the help and support counted on by people like Bobby Reynolds and Sean O'Neill. This man is a construction worker with ARC, or AIDS-related conditions. He was diagnosed while serving a prison term last year.
Well, their reaction was medieval. The deputies coming by my cell, peering in the window, calling me a disease carrier, and you know, like I said, their whole overall attitude is very medieval. You know, it's like a witch or something, you know, what the hell.
When he arrived in San Francisco, this man went to the AIDS Foundation, which assigned social worker Larry SAXXON to the case. SAXXON's job is to help people with AIDS and ARC get out of the worst of situations.
They may have an AIDS or ARC diagnosis, and they also are suffering from alcoholism and drug addiction. It's the most unpopular population you can possibly imagine, and a lot of those guys are also racial minorities.
The AIDS Foundation rents apartments at undisclosed locations to house destitute people with AIDS while they try to arrange for Social Security, Medi-Cal, and a place to live.
Their lovers throw them out, landlords throw them out, friends, roommates decide that they can't live with them anymore because they're afraid that they're going to come down with AIDS because they're sleeping under the same roof with them, which is insane, but people cater to that psychology of fear. They tend to go a little crazy.
D-Mill, I'm ready for my close-up, D-Mill.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes.
They're all very independent, extremely independent. Most of them have not been on welfare before.
Don't worry about it. If it don't kill you, it'll make you fat.
We eat well here at the Mill Valley Rotary Club. Today we're honored to have with us as our speaker Dr. Mary Reddick, who is the Executive Director of the Marin AIDS Support Network. Would you please
As AIDS spreads beyond the commonly known risk groups, gay men and intravenous drug users, all segments of society have a stake in learning about the disease. The fact that the AIDS virus is only transmissible sexually or through the blood is not always reassuring news.
One of the things that I learned in doing AIDS work was I learned that there's no such thing as a closed sexual boundary. About half of the gay men in the United States sleep with a woman at least once a year. We run the hotline at the Marin AIDS Support Network, and we know the level of fear.
I was in the hospital. I never forget this. A nurse was taking me out, and I didn't have the sickness then, walking me down and saying mean things about homosexuals and how they got the sickness and how they, God's punishing them. And I said to myself, damn. And she goes, well, I go and take care of these patients, but she has no feeling for them. And I thought, what if she was at my bedside when I was dying and didn't have no compassion and thought I should be punished? Boy, I'd been dead,
The epidemic has become a political phenomenon. Candlelight memorials in San Francisco and elsewhere have turned into rallies against discrimination.
Cleve, let me get a light, because I think they're going to start.
AIDS is a frightening disease, but to those who have it, public opinion is frightening and threatening as well.
People's fears are real, but they may not understand what my lifestyle is like, but they understand that I'm a person, that I'm hurting, so that they don't send me off to hell just because I'm a gay man or just because I have AIDS.
Together, the citizens of San Francisco will continue making a difference. Together, my friends, together, for we are a family, and we are not alone. Keep looking for the rainbows. Thank you.
The AIDS virus has already claimed more than 1,000 San Franciscans. Thousands more will join the unwilling ranks of those people before there is even hope for a cure.
Join with us in this moment of healing. You may say the names of those who have died or those who are now living for whom your heart hurts. Let us begin first with the names of the 3 men who began this candlelight march 3 years ago. Bobby Campbell, we open our hearts. Gary Walsh, we open our hearts. Bobby Reynolds, we open our hearts. We open our hearts.
William Calderon,
we open our hearts.
Jerry Lapani, Justin Boswick, Bill Kevin Johnson, Barry, Tony, Frank Richard,
We open our hearts.
Michael,
We open our hearts.
Richard.